With Amadeus, we wanted to go a little bit deeper into really understanding the challenges. But more so, we wanted to understand what the industry leaders were going to do over the next 3 years to drive their business forward, dealing with these challenges. And I will tell you, they are real challenges. So we engaged a gentleman to my left, Robert Cole, to help us do some research on this.
Really what we're going to be doing is looking at the last 36 months, really last 3 years, and this transition from recession to recovery and how that's working in the dynamics of the hotel industry. Specifically the alignment of business and IT priorities, where with the downturn things have gotten a little conflicted there. A lot of people, limited amount of money, lots of people looking to use that capital for a variety of different purposes. And the real question is, who takes leadership in this? How do you resolve these differences of the companies over, because it's a tremendous opportunity for growth at this point, but the company's got to be aligned. The road to recovery. Number one, operational stabilization. So now that we have revenues coming back in, RevPAR is up. Certainly some things going on in terms of growth in Asia Pacific and EMEA regions are exceeding that in the US, but all the results aren't in yet. I think Randy Smith this morning at the HSMAI conference was a little bit cautious, saying this recovery is, particularly for the US market, very different from years past. Before demand came up and then rates followed, that's not happening. So that's a definite concern. Reduction in capital expenditures. Hotels, major hotel chains certainly divesting of assets, trying to sell, do management contracts, things like that. Same thing applying to IT. What can they do to kind of eliminate these asset-heavy solutions and do something lighter from a cloud basis, shift it from CapEx to OpEx. And really, again, the burning question is who's going to do this and how? What are the best ways forward? The key comes down to how you integrate the business and IT needs. So fundamental question is, what powers the organization? Number one is to really establish the fundamental business drivers. One key way to look at that is, how does your organization create value for consumers? What are the bottom line things that really differentiate your product and the consumers provide value for, and how do you provide how do you find a measurable metric that you can start benchmarking? Another key is if you can start translating things into economic benefit. If you can do that, all of a sudden some discussions start working out a little bit more simply, where it isn't the marketing guys talking about share of mind and something in terms of brand resonance, and the IT guys are sitting there trying to say, here's something with response time, here's something with our cost per transaction, something like that. You've got to have some sort of common communication. Also, strategic hotel business priorities. At least for the numbers of people that I spoke with, certainly growth is a huge priority. I mean, certainly a lot of it's taking place currently outside of the U.S., but certainly change in terms of acquiring other properties, independent properties being amalgamated into now sub-brands of the major hotel chains. Brand clarity, certainly another issue of defining the brands. Although if you look at individual property basis, a lot of the strategic priority may just be survival. I mean, still in the U.S., I believe 14% of the properties that are funded through commercial mortgage-backed securities aren't in default, but they're delinquent. So they aren't really handling their mortgage the way their lenders would care to have them do it. And again, the strategic hotel IT priorities that came screaming out were asset-light operations, how they can do something with, get the same quality of service, the same service levels, even superior service levels, but do it in an asset-light environment that doesn't require a lot of CapEx to accomplish. We came up with the concept of the IT Pathfinder as a solution for this. And one thing, if you read through the white paper, and it's available online, it's not really a box on an organization chart. It's really more of a function, and with different organizations may apply it different ways. It may be a function, maybe a role, it may be a non-traditional sort of approach to it. But the most important thing is to identify the ideal infrastructure, and that that infrastructure isn't just for the IT operation, it's the infrastructure for the operation of the business. Also understanding the essential deliverables. What came screaming through from, I would say, 80% of the responses was customer orientation. What does the guest need? And kind of that obsessive orientation for the guest and what they're seeking seemed to be the absolute litmus test of what should be invested in and where the money should go to make sure that it goes to impacting the guest, not to pet projects, not to things that have just been scheduled and gee, it was deferred 3 years ago, so now we've got to get onto it. And really that demands a very deep core understanding of the mission and the goals of the organization. And again, what we really looked at with the white paper was that isn't necessarily a pure business function, a pure IT function. It's something that really bridges it, that puts those two together. Because most of the organizations that we spoke with, this growth that they're looking for, all of these savings, all of this margin is going to come from leveraging technology. And then finally, for quantifying the business impact in terms of really the analytics that are underlying the operation, so you can measure the performance. You know what the finish line looks like. You know where you are now, and you know how you're progressing as you travel along that road. The other things for an IT Pathfinder, they need to do fundamentally 3 things, and almost travels to any business, is to really eliminate dangers, capitalize on opportunities, and leverage operational strengths. Almost any organization, if you do those 3 things, you're going to be doing pretty well. So in terms of the dangers, one of the most interesting things that came out of the study was resistance to change. That was within the organization. Various groups who either through fear, whatever it may be, don't want to go make these necessary changes within the organization. So that really seemed to be the number one cautionary tale. It was also very interesting to see the dichotomy of certain groups who, in certain parts of the survey, we asked, what are the goals of the company and things like that, or what makes you different and good. It was, we have people who change and this, and we want to do all these, we're very strategic. And then you asked what were the greatest dangers, and the same, these people aren't going to want to change. It's like, was this just really PR speak and talking points that you're making to investors, or what's really happening in the organization? And then finally, I mentioned the reducing CapEx, shifting to operating expenses for capitalizing on the opportunities, certainly from an IT perspective, were huge. And then finally, for leveraging the organizational strengths, in addition to focusing on the guests, it was really understanding hospitality and the operations of how the group works, not just doing technology for technology's sake. The bottom line question isn't mobile, web, or native app. It's what do you want the tools to accomplish? What is the guest going to use these tools for?
So from our perspective, we are spending quite a lot of money and resources and brain power doing a lot of different things because we haven't made substantial investment in our technologies. As a hotel group and an amalgamation of acquisitions with different technologies that we sort of band-aided together. So we're spending a lot of time improving the infrastructure of just our core systems, scalability, reliability, stability, things like that, while we're also really investing significantly in relaunching all of our web platforms, all of our mobile platforms and applications. We're looking at reputation management and social listening tools to implement, and also a huge investment in improving our data management and customer analytics and the systems related to that, so that we can actually take have much more actionable insights rather than after the fact reporting. So, we've got it from A to Z, and our biggest challenge now is how do you prioritize doing all of these things if you haven't really invested for a number of years, and sort of the market's changed and has continued going forward. How do you prioritize those that are going to give you the biggest return? It's a huge haul, And quite frankly, I think you want to also look at how do you get some quick wins in that so people feel like you're actually making progress, because many of these initiatives are long-term. You know, they're 12, 18-month initiatives, so you want to keep the people motivated as you're doing it as well.
One is collaboration. So, you know, we look at collaboration not only with the guests, but also amongst our associates. There's some fantastic platforms that are rolling out where it's not only just email, but there's things where you can work together simultaneously on files and what have you, and do it in real time and actually be at a lower cost than what you currently have. Those are some cool things that are coming out on the collab side. The second thing is it's scalability. I mean, we're living in an age where you need help from, you know, that's why the cloud is so interesting, right? Because you can immediately start to scale. You need providers to help you manage that scale, especially in the world of GDS. I mean, those concepts, I mean, for us to try to build what is coming down the pipe, I mean, it's absolutely amazing to me to start thinking about all the volumes that are going to start hitting us from who knows where, right? Every high school kid in the world could program a travel site that'll start pinging your .com site every nanosecond. How are you gonna manage that? Do you just shut them off? Well, at what point in time do you say, that's the next one I'm gonna shut off? Am I gonna shut off Kayak? Am I gonna shut off Orbits because I can't process these things? No, you need people who know about this stuff and who can scale. So, you know, it's all about scalability.
Our biggest business drivers right now are really creating that consumer-centric culture that really improves the guest experience overall, and also has the ability to, you know, increase revenue generation from that individual guest, because we have lots of opportunity to have incremental spend once that guest gets on property.
That's really due to in your report references, Robert, the fragmented nature of our business. You know, we have 72, at Wyndham we have 7,200 hotels, and I'd say, you know, 99.999% of those are actually franchised. So when we talk about, you know, talk about what's important to the guest, and that needs to drive a lot of our decisions, we also need to be equally concerned about what's important to our franchisee and our owners, and that drives a lot of our decisions. And quite frankly, sometimes those are in conflict a little bit, believe it or not. So, you know, I think that, you know, that obviously is an opportunity of how you bridge that. But, you know, I think if you focus on a good strength and sort of something to keep in mind is you need to focus on the customer, whether that be the guest or the franchisee. So if you continue to stay focused on what's best for the customer, then that should really drive your priorities. And, you know, thinking about how you engage with that customer, I think, is the biggest opportunity, because, you know, you mentioned, you know, we're not in control of our brands anymore. Consumer is. Forrester just came out and said that, you know, 50% of consumers will not even consider staying at a property unless they actually read a review from an unknown source, right? It could be a stranger, but they believe them more than they would believe any advertising that I could possibly do. So I think how you engage with that consumer, both before and then during and then after your stay, is really critical, so that you can, you know, sort of close the loop on loyalty. If you're going to make these investments, these are investments that are not short term, and you need to make sure that your executive leadership and your senior management remain committed throughout the entire process. You're going to run into challenges. Nothing in technology is ever going to go smoothly. And so it's going to be important that when you hit that first hiccup, they don't say, oh, let's throw that on the back burner and we're going to go over here. So I think remaining true to that vision and not remaining true to that vision is probably the biggest danger that companies face.
Where it's going to get to, how the hotel industry gets, the platforms established and allocates the funding required to get those technologies in place when they're competing, as Flo said, with maybe property improvement programs or things maybe where there conflicts between the brands and the and the operators, where it's, hey, we've got to upgrade the brand. Here's the things we need to do to keep up. And the operators are trying to figure out, well, how do we pay the mortgage? We're trying to keep our staffing levels up. We're trying to do, and now we need new technology.
I also think one thing that I guess it would be described perhaps as change management, but the whole social aspect of what's going on is changing some of the rules of engagement for us from a legal standpoint, from a corporate communications standpoint, and putting the customer engagement model together for how do we deal with new media? How do we now talk to our customers? How do we support that in our contact center? Who can post on Facebook for us? How are we connected with our personal accounts? I mean, there's a whole set of rules that goes around that, and sometimes legal and corporate communications want to be really tight and control what the customer says, and we all know that's not possible. So it's putting those types of things together that will facilitate that communication process effectively. And I think there's a real danger of companies being too controlling in that area. At Aramark, it's really a group process. We have a strategic assets group at our headquarters in Philadelphia that is really looking at the entire company. We're a $13 billion organization, and so Parks and Destinations is a very small division of that organization. So strategic assets is really looking across the entire company to see, how can we cross-utilize technologies? How can we, have one data warehouse that will serve everyone? What are the things that we can do together? And then within each organization, we have an IT group as well as a business representative that's part of this team. And in fact, some of the things that we roll out, we're in the process of a project right now that's a 120-day process where they pulled 60 people out of their regular jobs for 120 days just to roll this out and make it happen. So there's pretty heavy-duty commitment to some of it, but it's very much a team environment, and usually always has an executive sponsor, almost everything.
We have two Pathfinders, so we have one person who does IT innovation for what, think of it as devices and what have you. Just about anything that's tactile that you can touch. So new servers, new endpoint clients, you name it, that's one person. And if he was here, I'd call him out, but that's John Fresnick on our team. The other person is IT processes, or not just IT processes, any processes. So think of it as financial processes or hotel processes. So what she does is go into hotels and looks and says, okay, how can technology enable this housekeeping process, right? And is it scalable, right? Because a lot of the times you do it once, I can do it 463 times, right? So we've made the investment. It's not a lot, and these groups are relatively small, but it is a very focused investment in trying to take that kind of Pathfinder innovation role.
From a marketing perspective, of course, technology underpins everything we do in marketing pretty much every day. And, that's from, how do you engage consumers to how do you run campaigns to how do you track, how do you, gain consumer insights. I've spent more time on the technology side in 2 years than certainly on sort of the advertising side as an example. And there was a concept that, I was sort of looking at, which perhaps, could be akin to the Pathfinder that in the marketing circles was called the marketing technologist. So it was somebody on the team that actually understood the technology components and could help you really translate what your business requirements were and help the IT team understand what the potential solutions were. But I think the Pathfinder is a great, certainly strategic application of that wherever it sits in the organization. And we do similar things across Wyndham Worldwide, but certainly not anything as formal as what was outlined in the report. From our perspective, and we're very fortunate because Wyndham Worldwide has made a pretty substantial commitment to the hotel group for increasing capital, and that's only because of the multiples that the hotel group gets versus our other two sister companies. It's much higher, so every dollar invested gets you more dollars back. However, it's not an unlimited well. And so, we're pretty rigorous on how we manage that. We actually have a capital committee that meets every month and reviews where we are with existing projects and determines can we start new projects based on sort of where we forecast we're going to be at the end of the year. And it's a pretty rigorous process. But I don't think that there is an easy trade-off from CapEx to OpEx, because we operate under pretty severe OpEx pressures as well. I mean, when we're talking about all of these new things that we have to spend our marketing dollars, and we have a different model certainly than Hyatt and Aramark has, in that, you know, our marketing dollars are based on a percentage of gross fees that the franchisees pay us, and we have to pay reservation fees out of that, and marketing. We have to market the brand and pay for all the infrastructure related to that. So, you know, the franchisee wants to see TV commercials, and yet I've got to pay for now an entire e-commerce infrastructure, and now I need to pay for social media monitoring tools and people to monitor those. I need to pay for consumer insights. I need to pay for people who are actually doing it. Nothing is free out there. So I think that there will continue to be pressure between OpEx and CapEx, and I think it's our job to try and manage that to the best that we can.
Once again, I don't look at this as OpEx versus CapEx. I look at it more as a utilization issue,
Yeah.
right? So once again, I think, for example, Amadeus, if we were to look at reservations with Amadeus, I think they can do a much better job of managing the capital and filling and managing the efficiency of the capital utilized than I can, right? Because once again, I have the Hyatt population, but they would have the Hyatt population, whoever else's population, and then their population, right? Therefore, we all know IT is a scale business, right? The more scale you got, the more efficiency, the lower cost. And it does translate. I mean, that's what these cloud models are all about. Now, the PBX in the cloud hasn't been able to translate that yet. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I think it will. But right now, you're seeing it. And I can get a much better infrastructure through a provider than I can do on my own. I'm not building tier 4 data centers, right? That's crazy. But I can buy some. And oh, by the way, they got disaster recovery. I can't even spell disaster recovery, right? I mean, so you're getting a much higher product, much less risk through some of these models. So it's not, I don't look at it as an OpEx, CapEx. It's more of a utilization facility. And just because it manifests through an OpEx cost, that OpEx cost is still going to be less than the depreciation. And plus, you know, on the backs of technology, we all know the minute we buy something, it's already technologically obsolete, right? Well, why do you want to manage that risk? Put that off. Let somebody else who's managing a much larger pool be able to manage that.
My experience, no. I mean, I think that that there's been a lot of, you know, we need to control it, we need to build it, we need to provide everything. And we're, you know, for these, there's a lot of tools out there that we wouldn't even have the foggiest idea how to actually start to build that we need now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so I think we have not stayed true to our core sort of vision in some of the decisions we've made around technology and even non-technology, you know, QA or operations or any of those other things as well. So
all of us struggle with this old school, new school thing, right? Where the old school is, let's build it, let's try, you know, we're going to get a competitive advantage by coding and doing all this good stuff and being first to market and having a responsive development team at our beck and call. They'll be able to code any of our requirements that we need. But the reality of it is the market moves much faster than your internal workforce. It's just the way it is. I mean, as much as you try, the new school paradigm is really where it's at, where you get into these solutions where they get you about 80% there, and then what you want to do is, I call it working around the seams, where you start bringing information together and rendering it in a fashion where it's very usable, right? That's really where I think, you know, from an IT perspective, where I add the most value is trying to bring this seam business together. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So the old school, new school paradigm, as we start moving into new school, we are looking for better solutions that are constantly being updated by innovative partners, right? Because, whose innovation curve do you want to jump on? Do you want to jump on your own, which you can control, obviously, or do you want to jump on somebody else's innovation curve, which is pretty steep, and they're very good partners. So that's where you have to decide.
I would almost go to the point of the culture and the organizational support, because if you have that squared away, you should be able to have focus on the customer and what's important. If you just have money, you may be able to do, well, I guess if you have an unlimited supply of money, you can make lots of mistakes and kind of muddle your way there, but it'll be very wasteful. But if you have those kind of core value-based sort of decisions on how you operate your company, that I think will bode much better than throwing some of the other things at it.
With organizational support, you can get the money focused at the right projects. And, the organizational support will drive the cultural change, especially, obviously if it's at the top. So that's, for me, is key.
And we live and die with, culture eats strategy for lunch. So
somebody tweet that. That's a good one.
Thank you very much to Robert. That was a very great work and very interesting. Thank you very much to the three of you to attending this session and to all the crowd here. We are always investing in those white paper. Last year it was about the future. This year it was much more about what's happening in the next 3 years. For us, it's always a way to make the ideas grow together and define the best way to the future of your business.